Hey, what's up? Adam Lobo here from Adam Lobo TV. So yet again, I gave you a bunch of options on my next comparison video to do on my YouTube community tab, and the one that came on top was this. The Poco F3 versus the new Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE. So in typical Adam Lobo fashion, here's my in-depth comparison to help you make a purchase decision. Now, starting from the phone's hardware specs, in terms of the chipset, the Poco F3 comes with a Snapdragon 870 chipset, which is a 7nm process, and then the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE comes with a Snapdragon 778G chipset, which has one step better 6nm process, and yes, both phones are 5G phones. Then when it comes to the phone's build quality, using both phones daily, this was a really tough decision to choose, simply because I love them both. Now, both felt really nice to hold, and it had a perfect thin design and the right form factor. So this would come down to what exact finish that you would prefer on a smartphone, whether or not it's the plain white finish on the Poco F3 or the glittering style of finish on the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE. Now, instead of copping out and saying that I would give this a draw, if you put a gun to my head right now and say, choose the design now, Adam Lobo, I would go with the Poco F3. Since it's more of a plain type of finish, but that does not mean that it is better than the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE, as this does come down to a personal preference. Now, in terms of durability, both phones have Corning Gorilla Glass 5, which is a little outdated, but it is fine by me considering the price of each of the phones. Now, the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE does feel a bit lighter when holding the phones side by side, where there is a difference of 38 grams, which is not really huge of a difference. But as mentioned, that both phones feels equally as good in the hands. Now, you will find the camera arrays to look very similar, where the 11 Lite 5G NE was a bit shorter, although that both phones have 3 camera lenses. Then as for the ports and buttons, the arrangements below are the same for both of the phones. But where the 11 Lite 5G NE wins is the fact that this SIM card slot can accommodate an SD card slot expansion, which the Poco F3 doesn't allow you to. Then the placement for the volume rocker and the fingerprint power button are the same, but you'll find on top to be just a little different, as the Poco F3 has a stereo speaker output over here, compared to the 11 Lite 5G NE, where the secondary speakers are at the earpiece area. And when it comes to the unlocking speed for both phones, both seems to unlock the same speed, but the 11 Lite 5G NE has a sort of a animation like this, which does seem to make it look like it's unlocking slower. Next, let's look at the phone's displays. Now, the Poco F3 had a tad bit larger screen, which is a 6.67-inch display compared to a 6.55-inch AMOLED display on the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE. And while both of the phone screens are the same when it comes to the screen resolution at 1080 by 2400, where the Poco F3 totally beats the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE is through the higher refresh rate of 120Hz compared to only 90Hz screen on the 11 Lite 5G NE. And the peak brightness of the Poco F3 was also better at a massive 1300 nits compared to 800 nits on the 11 Lite 5G NE. However, that being said, I still feel that the screen quality on both phones were still equally as good when it comes to watching videos on YouTube and Netflix. And speaking of Netflix, the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE has Dolby Vision support, which is totally mind-blowing to know that even the non-pro version of the Xiaomi 11T does not have that on the screen. So I would give an upper hand for the overall screen quality on the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE, specifically when it comes to watching videos on Netflix, where the playback specification for both phones are at Widevine L1 and Full HD playback resolution, which overall was really sweet. However, for me, as a person who prefers to watch Netflix on a bigger screen TV compared to my daily smartphone, it did not really impact my viewing experience when I was using both phones daily. So yes, if you watch lots of Netflix or even Disney Plus content on your phone, then the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE should be your choice. But if watching Netflix on the go does not matter to you as much, then the higher refresh rate on the Poco F3 and of course the higher peak brightness does make the Poco F3 a better, and of course I would personally go with the Poco F3 over here. But once again, that goes without saying that you will surely be very happy with both of the screens, especially when using both phones every single day. Next, onto the phone's cameras. The Poco F3 rear cameras comes with a 48 megapixel f1.8 aperture lens, an 8 megapixel f2.2 ultra-wide lens, and a 5 megapixel f2.4 macro lens. Then as for the 11 Lite 5G NE, it has a bigger 64 megapixel f1.8 aperture lens for the main, where the rest of the camera arrays are the same for the ultra-wide and the macro lens as well. Then when it comes to the front cameras, both were the same at 20 megapixel, but the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE has a better aperture value of f2.2 compared to f2.5 on the Poco F3. So if you're choosing between the performance or the phone's cameras, here's where you'll be in for a surprise. Now starting from the high megapixel mode, although on paper the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE has a bigger megapixel count, but as seen in these images, the image quality was pretty much the same even if you zoom in really close. Then the image on the 11 Lite NE is a bit more vibrant as the saturation has been boosted in the post-image processing. And it was the same on the main lenses, where although the dynamic range and the shadows are great on both images, the 11 Lite 5G NE has better saturation on the images. Yes, you can always edit the saturation by adding it later on when you edit the phones later, but straight out of the camera, the NE seems to be a more compelling image to post up on social media right after you've taken the photo. Then as for the zooming capabilities, both phones can zoom digitally up to 10 times over here, where the sensors and the image processing on the NE is yet again doing a better job, where the images were a bit clearer but a bit over sharpened to my liking. But as usual, I wouldn't even bother using these 10 times zoom images. Now as for the portrait mode, the age detection on human subjects were excellent on both phones, where the quality was also really nice. But if you're going to take portrait mode shots against the light, you'll find the Poco F3 to have better dynamic range in the background area, but in the expense of making the subject a little darker. Then when it comes to objects on portrait mode, the overall images was clean and nice, but slightly saturated once again on the 11 Lite 5G NE. Now as for the ultra-wide lens, both images produced on the phone was identical to each other, where it had the same amount of great quality, focal length and the same colors as well. And you simply can't tell both of the images apart, which was really nice to know. Next, looking at the macro mode shots then, both had easier focusing during this mode. Now on the 11 Lite NE, instead of macro mode, is called the super macro mode, where it was just macro mode on the Poco F3. Now names aside, once again you'll find all of the images to look very similar to each other. Now as for the night mode, on the ultra-wide lens, the images seems to be a tad bit sharper on the Poco F3, where everything else were the same in terms of the highlights and shadows. But when it comes to the ultra low light situations, although the images were darker on the 11 Lite NE, but overall it does look better compared to the Poco F3, where there were a bunch of artifacts as seen on the image over here. And then as for taking night mode shots for the main lenses, the results were identical yet again, with the same colors coming from the skies, and the highlights were also the same coming from the night lights. Now for some reason, if you like to take selfies at night, you will find that the images on the 11 Lite 5G NE to be little less noisier, as seen at the sky area on this first image, but there were times where both phones does perform the same once again. But I do not prefer to take nighttime selfies, but just in case, there you are. Now moving from night selfie to during the day, here's where the Poco F3 totally flaws the 11 Lite NE, where not only the dynamic range was extremely flagship level on the Poco F3, where the skin tones and the highlight roll-off was way better even during a backlit situation. Then when it comes to the portrait selfie, while both images had great age detection for the subject to background blur, but once again the true skin tones on the Poco F3 is still a win over the 11 Lite NE. Then as for video recording, both phones maximizes at 4K 30 frames per second for the rear. Now the quality of the video was great and the results were the same as the pictures, where the video footage on the NE was a bit more vibrant, especially on the shadows, but both was equally as good when it comes to the video quality, especially with the amount of dynamic range that you get on both phones. And the same could be said when it comes to the image stabilization when you're using the 4K rear cameras. Now the footage for the ultra-wide lens for both phones maxes out at 1080p, where the video quality was still good and the image stabilization was really great over here. Then as for the front video recording, both phones records up to 1080p up to 60 frames per second. And while the image stabilization was equally as good, but the exposure on the video footage on the 11 Lite 5G NE was not as consistent at all as seen over here. And if you're looking at the quality of the microphones using both of the front cameras as your vlogging camera, here's a quick sound test using both phones. Okay, so this is an audio test on the Poco F3. Test 1, 2, test 1, 2. I'm outdoor right now. And this is an audio test on the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE. Audio test and outdoor right now. So when it comes to the cameras, which one do you prefer? The Poco F3 or the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE? Let me know at the comment section below. And if you're enjoying this video so far, pause this video, go down, hit the like button and subscribe to Adam Lover TV if you haven't done so. That would be very much appreciated. Go. Then when it comes to both phone speakers, both has dual speakers, where on paper the Poco F3 is apparently stereo compared to just dual speakers on the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE. Now in terms of the audio quality, the Poco F3 was a little louder, but in terms of the sound quality, it was very close to each other. Then in terms of the maximum volume output, the Poco F3 goes up to 94.7 dB and the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE goes to a value of 92.4 dB, and here is a quick sound test. Then when it comes to the battery specs, here's where things were even a bit more interesting, as both the Poco F3 and the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE comes with the same 4520 milliamps of battery. Now one would think because of the higher refresh rate and of course the very bright screen on the Poco F3, you would think that the battery life would not be as good on the Poco F3, but once again, you're into a very interesting surprise. And based on my usage daily, the Poco F3 gave me an average close to a massive 7 hours of screen on time when I was at 10% battery, where the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE gave me about 6 hours and 40 minutes at the same battery percentage with dark mode turned on both of the phones. Now both phones has the same fast charging up to 33 watts, so all in all it does come down to the Poco F3 winning based on the better screen on time and using the phone every single day. So the current software version that I was at during this review for the Poco F3 was MIUI version 12.5.6, whereas the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE was at version 12.5.8, which makes sense since the 11 Lite 5G NE is newer. Now I do prefer the rounded icons on the Poco skin by default compared to the square ones on the 11 Lite 5G NE, but this does go down to a personal preference. And while MIUI is not my favorite Android skin, using both phones daily did not give me any issues. And being a person who has been using a lot of MIUI devices in this channel, gone are the days where there are lots of issues, and I did see a huge difference when it comes to the overall performance on the Poco F3, so that was great to know. But compared to the Poco F3 though, the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE promises updates to Android 12, 13 and 14, which is really nice to know. So you're kind of guaranteed that no matter what, you will get up to 3 years of Android updates and even 4 years of security patches. So if you think you want a smartphone that will last a really long time, like an iPhone when it comes to the software, then you should consider getting the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE. Then as for gaming, as usual, I started with Genshin Impact on the Poco F3, and ever since the phone had the latest update, there were lots of improvements on the overall thermals, and of course, when playing games for a really long time, Now the game ran very smoothly without lags or any issues at medium settings at 60 frames per second and motion blur turned off. And it did get a bit warm but not hot to the touch about 20 minutes into the game. And what's nice is that during the normal or the ultimate animation commands, the performance was very stable and there were rarely any lag when performing those commands. As for PUBG Mobile, the settings were at UHD on the graphics and frame rate were at Ultra, and the graphics at the game seems to have a better texture compared to the 11 Lite NE, where there were no battery drain or heating issues close to half an hour or even more during a longer gameplay. Next, looking at the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE on Genshin Impact, while the settings were the same at medium settings at 60 FPS. However, other than turning off the motion blur, I also found that I needed to turn off the anti-aliasing too, because there were a significant amount of lag in between the game, especially during the ultimate animation. Now, battery drain was not major but still noticeable, and like the Poco F3, they were a bit warmed when playing the games for more than 20 minutes or so, but other than that, it was very good. Then as for PUBG Mobile, the playing experience were identical to the Poco F3, and although the settings were at HDR compared to UHD on the Poco F3, I found that the graphics does look very similar. However, overall when it comes to playing games for a really long time, I feel that the 11 Lite 5G NE is surely a more comfortable phone to play games with because of how light the phone felt and how it feels just nicer during hours of gameplay. So in conclusion, having compared many smartphones side by side, I feel that the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE is a very high competitor against the Poco F3. Now if you're looking for a better rear camera, I prefer what the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE has done. However, if you're looking to taking lots of front camera images, I would point you towards the direction of the Poco F3. Then of course there's the SD card slot expansion on the 11 Lite NE. So if you need more storage, that would be the obvious choice. But other factors like the build quality was pretty much the same. But however, I was really shocked by the amazing battery life and also knowing the fact that it comes with a very bright and a very high quality screen on the Poco F3. So once again, if I had to really choose, I would choose the Poco F3. But compared to my previous comparison, it was a very close call to the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE. But I would love to know which one do you prefer at the comment section below, because there's no right or wrong on choosing these two phones, especially with this amazing price factor. And speaking of the price, as of the recording of this video, the Poco F3 is going for 1,659 ringgit for the 8GB of RAM and 256GB of storage, and the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE is priced at a slightly lower 1,599 ringgit for the same RAM and the storage variant, and I'll leave a link down below for you to get either one. Aside from that, thank you so much for watching. Hope this video helped you in making a purchase decision in choosing both the Poco F3 and the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G NE. If you did, be sure to give this video a nice big thumbs up, and a subscription to Adam Lobo TV would be very much appreciated. My name is Adam Lobo, and I'll see you in my next video.